Hi everyone, my name is Rudolf van Ee. I'm the founder of BCNL. Apologies for the short delay. We got some issues with Zoom. You might recognize that. Warm welcome to another Blockchain Netherlands webinar. Today's topic is about logistics and the supply chain. A special thanks to our organizing parties, which are TNO, Blocklab, Spark Living Lab, Windesheim University, and of course Cargoledger. Make sure to mute your mic and turn off video. Please ask your questions in the chat area, and we will try to cover as many as we can within the time frame. So let's kick off with a short introduction, mostly an update about BCNL and what's been going on with the Dutch Blockchain Week, and quickly we'll deep dive into blockchain tech in supply chain and logistics industries. So as you may know, BCNL is the community for blockchain related startups and scale ups in the Netherlands. We're with around 33 companies now. Three main pillars we're working on are events such as webinar of today, but also known from the Dutch Blockchain Week, Dutch Blockchain Awards, etc. And we build an international ecosystem where we collaborate with tons of different kinds of stakeholders. And third, representation. So we try to improve the conditions in which startups and scale-ups that are working with blockchain technology can optimize. The Dutch Blockchain Week is coming. You might have noticed via our social channels. It will take place from the 2nd until the 8th of December. It's a fully virtual digital event hosted at the ABN AMRO Bank's HQ in Amsterdam. BCNL is covering 8 sessions with around 20 speakers on the 2nd and 3rd of December. And on the other days, other event organizers will host their own events within the Dutch Blockchain Week guidelines. So the facilitating partner is ABN AMRO, very excited about that, that they're opening up to help us with a professional studio. If you want to organize your own virtual event, please let us know and you can contact us via team@bcnl.foundation. The first edition of the Dutch Blockchain Awards will take place, and we've got 6 categories. You can see them below. What I would like to stress is that we'll communicate more information about this entirely new event in the next few weeks. So stay tuned for that. And let's dive into the topic of today. Luca, let me give you control.
Yes, while you do that, I will start by introducing myself so that
yes, please go ahead.
We save time, right? Yeah. So, hi everyone. So happy to be here. My name is Luca Gelsomino. I am a senior researcher at Windesheim, University of Applied Sciences in Zwolle, and I also work for the supply chain finance community, an international organization focused on, well, supply chain finance. But I also study the topic of blockchain since a couple of years. I do not code. I'm not a computer science. I work in supply chain management. But at Windesheim, since a couple of years, we started to work on the adoption of technology, innovative technologies in supply chains. And of course, one of these is definitely blockchain technology. So we started to analyze what is going on with blockchain technology and essentially what can we say about the adoption of blockchain technologies in supply chains. Before we go into it, and I'm going to basically use my 10 minutes to give you 3 large examples of what is going on in blockchain technologies and supply chains. I want to make one point, one main point, essentially. When we talk about supply chains, and especially in the context of adoption of innovative technologies, and especially when we talk about blockchain, we always have to remember that there is a difference between what we think about in terms of supply chains and what is actually happening. Sorry, one note. Someone is keep pushing my slides. If someone is moving my slides, please stop. So supply chains as we imagine them, supply chains as we visualize them are essentially suppliers, one company, and buyers, right? That's what we think about when we say supply chain. So if you think about the supply chain of Unilever or Philips, then you think about, well, there are the suppliers of the suppliers, and so on and so forth. And there is Philips in the middle, then there are the distributors. That's not how it actually works. A supply chain is what you see on the right. That's literally a supply chain. So we took a global manufacturer in the transportation industry, and we mapped out his supply chain because we wanted to see how it looks like. So we got databases of relationship with companies, and we came up with that. That is roughly 25,000 companies, which represents the supply chain of this global manufacturer. And they are all interconnected to the point that it's impossible to understand, even at the simplest level, how the chart, how the graph look like. Suppliers serve other suppliers that compete with other suppliers, and competitors of the company are also suppliers and customers of their own suppliers, and so on and so forth. The supply chain is a mess. It's in real life much, much more complex and difficult to understand and visualize than what we actually. This is the reason why essentially we need to keep in mind that supply chain are complex when we talk about that in the context of blockchain adoption, because sometimes the feedback that we get is, well, blockchain adoption is relatively straightforward. Why don't we do things with something different? Why don't we do this with an Excel file? Why don't we do this with an easier way of doing it than blockchain? Why do we need blockchain technology? Sometimes the answer is we need blockchain technology because you are thinking about the thing on the left as a supply chain, but the supply chain is the one on the right. Okay, that said, let's go into why do we need blockchain in supply chain. Number one, logistics, finance, process integration. So if you think about the order to cash process or the procure to pay process of companies, that is the process of reconnecting documents about delivery of stuff with administrative and financial documents, there are huge problems, especially for SMEs, in reconciling these documents together. So if I am an SME, I basically need to reconcile documents about the delivery that I have received from suppliers, the quality check that I have done on those deliveries with administrative documents on the order, the invoicing process, and so on and so forth. If I make mistakes, these mistakes are always very, very costly. And the same goes on the other side, where I deliver to my customer and I have invoicing and other type of processes, administrative processes on the other side. Well, these process could be easily standardized, and efficiency gain could be gained by having a technology such as blockchain that can help in clarify when specific events in the supply chain have occurred without any doubts, and will facilitate the activities of reconciliate together documents such as logistics documents for delivery with the administrative processes like invoices and orders. This is something that will greatly help SMEs, which is, of course, something that we always look at, as SMEs are sometimes overlooked by innovation and power dynamics in the supply chain. But it's not something that we are going to see tomorrow. There are a lot of talk about whether blockchain can actually improve the management and the integration of processes, administrative processes, but it's not something that we are going to look at tomorrow. On the other side of the spectrum, we have track and trace, which is essentially the process of tracking documents and products throughout global supply chains. Track and trace is essentially the holy grail of logistics. If you go back 30 or 40 years, yeah, more or less, there was still someone talking about track and trace across the globe. Why? Because if you want to gain efficiency in track and trace, in logistics, sorry, what you have to do is that you need to have a proper tracking of products throughout different companies and throughout the world. That's essentially what we have seen in logistics for the consumer. So if you think about Amazon, UPS, or DHL, the main innovation that they brought to us as consumers is the possibility to tracking what we buy from their stores. This is increasingly difficult to do in global supply chains for a lot of problems that you can imagine yourself, and we don't have time to go into, but blockchain technology can essentially provide certainty over specific information and documents that are needed and that needs to be exchanged between companies. And this can facilitate the adoption of track and trace technology. That is something that we are going to see very soon, basically, because we are already seeing proof of concepts. Most of blockchain applications in supply chain are based on track and trace or revolves around the concept of track and trace. On the other side, track and trace is probably something that will not impact SMEs directly in the shortest term, but will be adopted initially by largest companies in their supply chain with largest parties. But it's also something that will bring a lot of benefit to companies. Third point, and then I will stop, is the access to credit for logistics companies, which is essentially the following problem. If you think about a small transportation company, a small logistics service provider that does transportation within a country or within, let's say, the Benelux, then this small logistics service provider will probably have high difficulties in accessing credit, in accessing liquidity from the financial system. Why? Because they are small and the financial system will have difficulties in evaluating their credit standing. How can you solve this problem? By giving the financial institution access to certain information about what the logistics company has done. For example, the fact that delivery has been completed, that the customer has accepted the delivery, and that the invoice of the small transportation company will likely be adopted, will likely be paid, sorry. How do you do this? By giving certainty of information, which again leads to blockchain technology. So you can think about systems that can give access to specific documents of the logistic process, which specific documents from administrative processes to not only buyers, suppliers, and service providers, but also to financial institutions that can use the knowledge about these documents, the visibility on these documents to facilitate access to credit for those small transportation companies. That's essentially everything that I have to say. It's a very short, very quick overview, but if you have any question or if you want to know more about what we are doing in this sense, please send a question right now through the chat, or alternatively, just send me a question by email or connect with me on LinkedIn. That's it.
Thank you, Luca. I really like the QR code as well. It's a great introduction, so thanks for that. Next speaker is Hjalmar van de Schaaf. In the meantime, that you introduce yourself, Hjalmar, I'll give you access to controlling the slides.
Okay. Thanks, Rudolf. Excellent introduction, Luciano. I'm Hjalmar van de Schaaf. I'm the founder of Cargoledger, and we are working on. Did you give me access already? Okay.
You should have access now.
Okay, no, it's not. Okay, let me check.
Let me see. And if you click the pages, does that work?
Yeah, I will try. This is my, okay, this is us. We are a Genesis member of so basically one of the first members of blockchain in Netherlands. And we are working on digitization of data-driven supply chains, basically. And in my first job, I worked for Deloitte. our console data, and we were busy digitizing way bills. And paper is still one of the main challenges in the nowadays supply chain and logistics. Paper adds complexity, it gets lost, but it also provides trust, but that trust can be organized in a different manner, and that's what we do with Cargoledger. Can you click, Rudolf? Good stuff. Cargoledger, data-driven supply chains and logistics. Next, please.
Yes, I will click. You should have control.
Yeah, I don't, it's not working here. I don't know what it is.
All right, I'll just click, no worries.
Good stuff. So we deliver value for shippers, for freight forwarders, and for carriers. And what we do basically is, can you click to the next slide? We have, if there's a sender or a receiver, then we capture shipment info, either from their ERP system or enterprise management or TMS or what have you. Or you can add it in our front end. Then we tag the cargo with either a QR code or with a sensor. And then the information is shared peer-to-peer. When the goods are shipped on the receiving side, it's a matter of scanning tags, verifying and validating. And if all is okay, there can be an instant payment. What our value add is basically proof of origin. You know what was entered in the system. That was entered by the one originate or starting the supply chain or at the beginning of the supply chain, and also every added document can be proven. And and basically we also add proof of actions in which we know who does what, where, and when. And we can optimize planning because if with all those with the blockchain we get better info, and with better information you can optimize, you can plan better, you know what's coming your way, and you can organize your operations accordingly. Next, please. And this saves time and money. So up to 80% more efficiency in your supply chain and logistics. And if you look at, we have specific software, multilingual. We have a front end with which we capture the shipment info, and then mobile web apps that help on specific spots in the supply chain and logistics to perform those actions that I mentioned earlier. This is one of our front ends. And next, shipment info, and we have basic control tower information. Everything is basically an API, so you can receive all information also in your existing your own data warehouse or any other tool you have. We provide track and trace, indeed, as mentioned earlier by Luciano. And what is unique about what we do, we have we have an accredited ECMR, which is basically a view on all the data we have, or we store in our system and in the blockchain, and then on top of that we add a license plate. And this data is stored minimally for 7 years. It's both human and machine readable. So we share that with authorities, but also between all the parties involved in the road transport. Next, please. But we also add other documents, either in PDF or any other form, that are relevant for the moving of the goods. We see ourselves as a second layer software. So we connect to existing systems, points of sale, warehouse management system, transport management systems, and we basically gather data from that and create a transport execution plan out of that, which we share between all the players, with all the parties. And the moments of handover are stored in the blockchain also. Yeah. Okay, next please. As I mentioned, we have APIs. We integrate with a number of existing systems, and this is basically how it works. If you look at it high level, so there's an order, the freight forwarder or the shipper sends in the info, puts it into the system. Then the relevant information is shared based on roles and responsibilities. At pickup, the carrier adds a license plate, and then the specific documents that for the moving the goods are created from using that initial stored data. And that's how it then goes through the supply chain. And all updates, all changes, all acceptances or documents that are, for example, analysis documents or specific documents that are needed further in the supply chain are can be added by all the parties involved, and all the data and all the updates are shared between all parties that play a role here. Next, please. And we know that from that we save our shippers or freight forwarders 55 cents on every euro spent on order handling and administration. And also our ECMR has a business case of up to 13 euros saved per shipment. And last but not least, we did we received a grant from the province of North Holland to gather the states of conditioned goods from a container and through a low orbiting satellite network. And what we did, there was a portal involved and also IoT sensors, and we took the data through the portal, send it to the satellite and then to a ground station in the Netherlands, and picked it up and validated it against basically the data we had stored in our blockchain or in our front end. And so that's basically further, it was a very interesting project, low cost in its base, and we're looking further into how we will develop services on top of that. Okay, that was my my presentation. If you want to know more about what Cargoledger can do for your supply chain and logistics, you can always ask us for a demo. And last sheet, we can. These are my contact details. Okay, thank you very much. If you have questions, please leave them in the chat, and then take it from there.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Next up is Wout from TNO, Wout Hofman, senior scientist.
Yes, I will. I have.
Let me give you control.
Mike.
There you are. Could you please check if you're able to click?
It does not work. What did you now do it, Rudolf? Yeah.
It was you actually, so I didn't touch anything.
Oh, it's a bit slow. Okay, so I will introduce myself. I'm a senior scientist with TNO. I worked with TNO for 40 years. Before that, I worked with Deloitte. I know Hjalmar from Deloitte. And I'm going to present something about a development we're doing called the supply chain feasibility ledger. It's maybe similar to what Hjalmar presented, but it's actually trying to show what Luca indicated. How can I create supply chain feasibility? Let me see how I do it, the click. Is there a next page option?
It says Wout Hofman is controlling your screen, so I think it might be just a bit slow indeed.
Okay, so let's first look at what supply chain feasibility is. So like we are scientists, we always want to know what it is. And so this is the definition you can find. It's the ability of parts, components, or products in transit to be tracked from the manufacturer to the final destination. So it's all about the logistics operations between the manufacturer and the final destination of the goods. It doesn't say anything about buyer or seller relationship, but just visualizing the goods flow. And supply chain feasibility, the objective is to improve and strengthen the supply chain. So it's about optimizing logistics operations and reducing logistics costs. If you want to see more about it, there's a document you can find on via the link below that elaborates on all these kind of things. So let me see now how rapid it is. Yes. So the first thing we should figure out is about why do we do it? There's been a lot of research in the past. You see it already on the dates here, the years. So starting in 1995, that's the earliest, till 2008 or 2012. Lots of research has been done about why we need supply chain visibility. It's all about costs, it's about quality, the service level. What I most hear is that customers are interested in service level, so it's on-time delivery. It's also a lot about process synchronization that has to do with costs. So it's about replenishment of all these kind of things. So there's lots of business opportunities to implement supply chain visibility. If you know, as a customer, as a person, we are gradually quite aware of supply chain visibility. When we order something at an e-commerce site, we expect a track and trace code to see when the goods sort of arrive at our premises. So this is very normal for persons in e-commerce, but it's not normal in business to business. Many of these things are still lacking. So when we go into this ledger, this lists the overview of the functionality. So we are looking at all types of supply and logistic chains. We are covering all modalities: road, rail, inland waterways, truck, air, all cargo types. In general, you have bulk cargo, liquid or solid, like palm oil, sand, general cargo, pallets, boxes, what have you. Containers, so sea containers, air containers, Danish containers for flowers. You could, well, you could think of anything. Also row trucks on a vessel, on a ferry. So all these combinations are feasible. I've put there as a second point some type of smart contracts. That's not really what we do, but I will explain later on. This is about distributing events according to business relations. So when you have a customer forward a carrier relation, the carrier can put an ATA of his truck on the ledger and make it available to the forwarder. And the forwarder has a smart contract that automatically distributes the ATA to the applicable customer. So this is especially when you have a less than truckload, or for sea going vessels or rail. But take less than truckload, then each shipper or consignee is informed of the ATA of the truck at the destination to deliver the cargo. But again, it's about tracking all types of objects. So you can retrieve the container track from the ledger. Now, what we also intend to do, I have to speed up, I see. What we also have to do, Luca, is interface with others, and we base ourselves on EC developments. And now I want to go to the next. Yeah, so why is it different from other solutions? And that has to do that we separated the supply chain, and that's what you see in the screen, from the ledger network. So it's all types of ledger network, and it's sort of trusted. And I will explain that later on. It relates to the standardization type of issue. Now, and we can do it globally or whatever. So it's supply chain visibility in this network with reference to document data. Now, what are the features? So it's easily implemented with a smart contract that can be distributed. It's robust and scalable. The network tolerates up to 1/3 of the nodes to fail. It's a network effect, rapid scaling to new users. It's the immutability, no unauthorized changes. And what is special, it's linked to what we call the semantic web stack. So we relate it to semantic standards like those of the World Wide Web Consortium and so on. And we think that this will improve the quality of the software. Now, some examples of the user interface, this is how a customer can see the functionality for the full truckload example. He can create orders. He can make them available to the carrier. The carrier can confirm that the order exists or not. And then eventually he can show all the progress of the individual order. I think this is similar to what Hjalmar already showed. So this is no big deal. But it's depending on the functionality, and it's depending on the structure. So we intend to have versioning. So what I showed is an example of the full truckload. We extend it to other modalities, to all types of cargo, and will extend, in this example, GUI functionality. You're going too fast, but maybe that's my... Can you go back? Yeah. Second version, that's about the smart contracts. Third version, linked to data documents. Fourth is leg synchronization. So if you have a multimodal chain, that you're able to synchronize as an LSP between the legs. And then include authorities. And we are sort of changing these versions depending on the requirements of customers. And that's currently been done in the federated project. Now, the structure is similar to what Hjalmar showed. We focus on this green part, so about the supply chain visibility logic, and we develop supply chain visibility APIs. Now, these will be open available. These will be based and support the open trip model for those that are familiar. It is described in terms of logic, in terms of process and data, and everything, all this logic needs to be available to develop web-based GUIs and to integrate with IT back office systems. Because what you want is that you behave according to rules already in your back office system or in your web application. And what we currently do is we run this green part off-chain. So it's not on-chain, not in the network, it's off-chain. So it's not automatically distributed via the network. And in the Spark Living Lab, we will provide this network operating in 3 different cloud environments. Sorry, that's my clock disturbing. It's not in time, but... And now what we also need to do is to improve the functionality. So to improve the GUI. And why a GUI? The GUI is a way to visualize the APIs, but the core is the APIs. So normally this type of functionality needs to be implemented in your back office system. The process and data logic we develop in the federated project. And the federated project is a pan-European project with project management from the Dutch Ministry of EMW. And we include all types of business logic, and we will eventually map to various standards, like the Open Trip model, the TradeLens, the Digital Container Shipping Association, and what have you. Technically, we also still have to integrate with various existing solutions, like onboard unit providers. And we will do this in an EFTI, an Electronic Free Trade Information Regulation project of the Dutch Ministry, where we have to get data from onboard units, from ECMR platforms, from transport management systems, and so on. In this particular case, for accidents with trucks. So that's the case that we have. And we will also investigate porting it to potentially other ledger technology. We currently use BigchainDB. Now, this is open and neutral. What does it mean? We base ourselves on developments of the federated project, where we support the Ministry of Infrastructure and Water Management. And this development in this project is going to be accepted and brought into the European level, where it's going to be accepted by DG Move as a way for sharing logistics data. Eventually, we will provide the open specification of the APIs and the logic, and potentially also the software code. Everyone can install it in their own environment and run it. So the logic, the nodes, etc. You can integrate with your systems, and we will try to integrate with standards. So it's all about distributed governance, and everyone can join. So, but the basic message is open and neutral. We base ourselves on standards. Now the final one, it's the call for action. So we are TNO, we don't develop operational ledgers. We develop software to complete and improve the functionality that we provide to the EU. So what we need is from enterprises, provide your case, and technology developers, let's try to jointly develop an operational environment. So there can be a win-win situation for enterprises and technology developers and TNO in this context to come up with good specifications validated in practice that can be used on a large scale in an open and neutral environment. So whenever you have questions, like I said before, put them in the chat, and you can also contact me via email. So I would like to end it here, Rudolf.
Aljosja, are you able to control the screen? Could you please check?
Let's see. Not yet. A few options. Okay, I'm controlling your screen, it says. Let's see. Yeah, it's working. Perfect. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Aljosja Beije. I'm a co-founder of Blocklab. Blocklab is a member of the Port of Rotterdam. We are a subsidiary of the Port of Rotterdam, and we focus on blockchain for logistics and energy. Logistics, well, if your parent company is a port, that makes sense. And energy is probably one of the most interesting challenges, as Port of Rotterdam has committed to the Paris Agreement for 2035 to be a CO2 neutral port, and that requires coordination of all kinds of different sustainable energy sources. I'm not going to go into that, but we also have we also use blockchain for those purposes. Apart from being the founder of Blocklab, I also co-authored a book on blockchain and supply chain management together with two professors from the University of Southern California, and have been involved with blockchain since 2016. The project I'm going to talk about is called the Interoperable Negotiable EBL. So an EBL stands for Electronic Bill of Lading. It's a project that we do with a number of parties. It was originally started by port authorities of Singapore and the port authorities of Rotterdam, and actual development was done by Blocklab and the Information and Communication Authority in Singapore. And that original group has expanded, and with the goal to create a sandbox environment in which we can do the first legally binding and paperless transfer of ownership of a bill of lading. And why is this so special? Legally, according to Dutch law and according to Singapore's law and according to a lot of other countries, Transfer of ownership cannot be done paperless. So what we want to do is show that it works from a technical perspective, but also we work on making the necessary changes to the Dutch and Singaporeese legal framework. For that, we work very closely together with the Ministry of Justice and, for example, the Dutch Association of Banks. So we really focus on the concept of transfer of ownership. So the title EPL is perhaps a little bit misleading. If you look at how we currently do trade, there's still a lot of paperwork. The bill of lading hasn't really dramatically changed in the last couple of hundreds of years, despite the fact that with the onset of containerization, we've seen an enormous amount of volume change. And consequently, there's a lot of people, a lot of organizations involved in processing paper to machine readable data and back to paper again, and that chain continues for quite some time. So there's a lot of manual handling, a lot of errors. Fraud is quite rampant in certain situations. And that, in the end, that is costing the industry a serious amount of money. Cost of documentation is estimated to be about 20% of the cost of shipping. To put that in numbers, the Digital Container Shipping Association has estimated that with a 50% use or adoption rate of the electronic bill of lading, the shipping industry, and only the shipping industry itself, could already save $4 billion on per year. So we're talking really about serious amounts of money. So what we want to do is basically ensure that the proof of the ownership of a bill of lading can be digitally administered. And for that, we came up with a number of design principles. And one of them is that that we use the public and permissionless Ethereum network. We believe that this is, at this point in time, the way forward if you want to create interoperability over various systems, and these can be blockchain systems or non-blockchain systems. We don't store any data. The only thing that we basically do is we create a token on the basis of the data of the EBL and a wrapper around that data. And that token is then transferred from one owner, one holder of the token to the other one. So it's in its simplest form, very much like a Bitcoin type of application where you transfer a Bitcoin token from one person to the other. We don't care about, because we don't really care about data, we're also payload agnostic. It doesn't really matter how data is transferred between one party and the other. We only focus on the ownership part. It's open source, it can be downloaded from GitHub, and we are continuously updating GitHub based on the developments that we do. And it's MLETR compliant, and MLETR is the model law of electronic transfer of records that was developed by the United Nations. And the main challenge is not per se the technical side, really getting the necessary changes in terms of the legal side. And then we're now working on, together with Dutch Blockchain Coalition and the Ministry of Justice and a couple of other parties on formulating what is really needed in order to make that change in the Netherlands when it comes to the necessary changes in the law. So we first and foremost, therefore, the first point is really legal harmonization. And most people will say, well, you really picked a very difficult topic. And that is true. We didn't start with the easiest puzzle, to be honest. But if we don't solve the legal part, then there will be a big barrier for further digitization, because people will stick to paper because of legal reasons. So we decided to take that battle head on, and also really we believe we are able to do that because on both the Singaporese and the Dutch side, there's strong involvement from the authorities in the Netherlands. Ministry of Economic Affairs and Ministry of Justice are very much involved. So we decided to really deal with this really ugly beast from day one. We want to develop standards, think of about developing standards for the tokens. We basically started out already with a standard token based on the Ethereum ERC 721 token. I'll explain a little bit more about the technology later on. And also ensure that it's clear on what kind of technical requirements are needed in order to implement a TradeTrust solution. So that's really accreditation structure. And it's a set of digital tools, some smart contracts. We are currently working on setting or integrating TradeTrust with identity frameworks. So we want to provide a number of standard tools that people can use to really use the TradeTrust application. So it's very much a digital utility. It's an open source framework. As I mentioned, it can be found on GitHub. We don't, everybody can use it. It can be integrated with any application that exists, blockchain or not blockchain. We currently, it has been integrated within the Deliver network, which is a project done by the Port of Rotterdam in combination with ABN AMRO and Samsung. And it's also been implemented in a blockchain solution that is operated by DLT Ledger in Singapore. So what we basically do is provide a number of proofs, proof of identity, so that's very much related to the identity part, proof of ownership, so who's the owner of this particular token or this that we have developed, where is it coming from, who's the originator of the original EBL, and ensuring that nobody has meddled with the document itself, so proof of integrity. And people can implement it in any way they want. So it's a very flexible tool in that respect. So what it's not, we don't define how to exchange data. We don't define what kind of fields should be in specific documents. We're not involved in the business logic. The only business logic that we really take care of is the ownership part and the transfer of ownership. In a little bit more detail, so what we do is we take information from any electronic bill of lading system system that can be blockchain or it can also be non-blockchain that produces a digital native file that is wrapped around some metadata that is basically the ERC 721 metadata that is hashed, and in the end, that hash is the end result. That is the token that we use to which the ownership is assigned, and to which also the ownership can be transferred between parties. And also, in the end, the token can be burned in order to, when the bill of lading is returned to its originator, in this particular case, the carrier. In order to make that possible, to verify identity, to verify integrity and ownership, we also have there's an escrow smart contract in particular to ensure that at any given point in time, we can be sure that one particular entity is the owner of the token and also the beneficiary of that particular token. This is where we are right now. We're working on the first live shipments. We have done already integration with other platforms, as I mentioned, with DLT Ledger, and primarily we're now focusing on integration with identity frameworks, and that is what we currently work with as part on the Spark Living Lab project. We're talking with iShare and ensuring that identity framework from iShare can be integrated and can be used when when the right entities need to be entered as part of this particular bill of lading. And yeah, the live shipment is fully paperless, means that in order to be able to do that, we're really looking at the necessary changes need to be made to the Dutch law. And we are currently working together on specifying a proposal for that change in the law. So that is a little bit, that's going to take a little bit more time. But we really want to create something that it can be used by everybody and is not going to be proprietary. And we are actively looking for companies that are interested in joining, for example, as a shipper to experiment with this in their day-to-day business. If you have any more questions, you can put them in the chat, or if you want to get into contact with me, that's also fine. You can. I want to give the word to the next speaker then.
Thank you, Aljosja.
Thank you. I'm going to switch to control.
Let's see if that works. So, not yet. There it is. Okay, good afternoon. My name is Victor van der Hulst. And thanks for having me, of course. And to be honest, we are a little bit ahead of schedule. Didn't expect that, to be honest. So, Victor van der Hulst, Program Manager for Spark Living Lab and working at Windesheim University of Applied Sciences in Zwolle, together with Luca. And I have a background in IT, software development, information management, consulting, and of course, blockchain. But let's talk about the Spark Living Lab. It's mentioned multiple times by the previous speakers, but what is it all about? and I'd like to explain it in the next 5 or 10 minutes. But first of all, as presented by Luca and Wout, supply chains and logistics are facing various challenges these days. And most of these challenges are related to limited transparency, or let's say visibility. And also remember, we are talking about supply chains, but there are in real life, these are in real life more networks, of course. So at the same time, very ambitious goals are set, which means supply chains, or let's say the supply networks, need to collaborate more effectively. And in our vision, these goals can only be achieved by better data sharing amongst all supply chain stakeholders and use a so-called shared reality on an open, neutral data infrastructure. Let's say a level playing field. But of course, that's easier said than done. Building these infrastructures, attracting and connecting companies, designing a suitable value model based on pain and gain sharing, and connecting the physical world with the digital world, just a couple of issues that need to be solved. And I think we all struggle with these challenges. And that's where Spark Living Lab could be of help. So what are our goals and objectives? First of all, of course, to explore the application of data sharing technologies, or let's say blockchain, IoT. And to run experiments and investigate not only the technological aspects, but also logistics, business, operational, and legal aspects of implementing this technology. And as already mentioned by Luca, small and medium-sized enterprises, the SMEs, need special attention, since the majority of logistics operators in the Netherlands are SMEs with limited ICT capabilities and investment budget. So entry barriers and costs of solutions need to be affordable for these SMEs. And moreover, most SMEs lack the expertise to experiment with data sharing technologies by themselves. So they need a little bit support. Oh. So when you recognize one of the challenges presented by Luca or the other previous speakers, I would say please contact us and let's see if it's interesting for you to join our program. And the only thing we ask is for participation and collaboration. So no money involved, but of course you should contribute with your domain expertise, your network, and I would say your data, your information. And currently we are working on 3 main use cases. TradeTrust, already presented by Aljosja, the electronic bill of lading. BlockCert, which is more about digital certificates for agri-food. And conditioned goods, which is about monitoring service level agreements in cold chains. And for the last 2 use cases, we will use the supply chain visibility ledger presented by Wout to develop these solutions on. And if everything goes well, hopefully we will present our progress of these use cases in a couple of months, let's say in the winter. And of course, I have to mention that Spark is an initiative from a large consortium of companies and co-financed by NWO and the Ministry of Infrastructure and Water Management, SIA, and the top sector logistics. And finally, oh, there it is. We are nominated for a Dutch Computable Award. And yeah, we can use all help. So please vote for us on awards.computable.nl/STEM. You can find us in the category MKB, which is Dutch for SME, small and medium-sized companies. And hopefully, Rudolf, we will be nominated for a Dutch blockchain award as well, of course. So when you want to know more about the project or how you could benefit from it, yes, please contact me or drop me a line in the chat. Thanks for the attention.
Thank you, Victor. Thanks so much. Could you share the link where people can vote for the Computable Awards in the chat area, maybe? That makes life easy for them. And personally, I was quite curious about the agri-food examples that you mentioned. Could you elaborate a bit more on that?
Yes, sorry. I was looking for the correct link, of course. The two examples in agri-food. One is about digital certificates. It's in the potato industry. And we are working closely together with two companies involved in these processes, which have to do with certificates you need to have as a farmer to be able to sell your potatoes to larger producers. And these certificates are issued by certification body, of course. And that's all being done on paper right now. So there is some overlap with the so-called bill of lading, because that's also digitizing a paperless document. Yeah, we try to use that same technology in a different process, meaning certification in agri-food.
Agri-food, I think, is a big use case.
Yeah.
When looking at, for example, what the fork is doing, and all big corporations are trying to create more transparency. Do you think, from a commercial perspective, that is a good thing to do?
What do you mean from a commercial perspective?
So let's say that Albert Heijn, Unilever, etc., all experimenting with basically showing what the source is of the product and who made money on what. Do you think that is something customers really want, or is it a necessity for the companies?
Yeah, it's a very good question. I would say right now it's more a necessity. I've been talking to the large retailers, and they say, well, more transparency in provenance, for example, will be a license to operate in the near future from a food safety perspective. The suppliers in the end have to comply with it. And the challenge is always, what kind of technology or tooling will you use to comply to such rules? And if you want to follow products on batch level in such a large network, the question will be, are you going for a centralized solution or for a more decentralized solution? Yeah, our vision is, of course, a decentralized solution, which brings us to blockchain. So yeah, I think it's a good approach. For the end customer, I'm not sure if it's actually adds value. There are already some initiatives live. You already mentioned Albert Heijn. We are all able to scan a bottle of juice and orange juice, for example, and to see the provenance of the oranges. And I don't think any of us will do it right now, because why should we? But it is possible. And it's mostly related right now to, again, certificates. So for the orange juice, it's about the Rainforest Alliance. And this certificate is only be issued on an implemented blockchain platform.
Thank you for answering. Victor. We've got a question from Jack Weering for Aljosja. And Jack is asking, how do you provide privacy for users in the EBL case? Aljosja, I'm not sure if you're speaking, but we can't hear you. I'm not sure he's there anymore. I've got another question. It was, let me see. So where do you guys think the overall trend is going in terms of what is expected by the market? How innovative is this in order to be really mainstream adopted? What do you foresee there? This is an open question to all.
Rudolf, I assume an open question to all presenters.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
This is Wout here.
Hi, Wout.
So I think the main issue for a broad adoption has to do with standardization. So what we need to do is to create standards that are implemented via the APIs on ledger technology. So you have many blockchain initiatives running everywhere, but the governance is always by a small group of participants, so a small community. And so as long as we don't have standards, it remains limited to this small group. So we need to have open standards for particular business functions, like what we try to do with supply chain visibility, and have them broadly adopted, at least what we try to do at European level. And maybe the same thing what Aljosja does with the bill of lading, to see how these things can be adopted at a European or global level. I see that Hjalmar is also wanting to react.
No, I agree with you, Wout. There are a lot of standards, and interoperability between all those standards needs to be organized, and that's definitely, yeah, it would also help if the EU is focusing more and more on digitizing, and I think blockchain is also something the EU is having a strong vision, and it's developing that vision. That will also help, and I think. Yeah, in the end, is in our view a public infrastructure for logistical or maybe even supply chain information to a certain extent. Yeah, will make the world a better place. So working towards that is the ultimate goal. So that's but yeah, getting there is a lot of work. But you mentioned the right stuff about.
I don't see any other questions coming in. Oh, let me see, just one jumped in. Casper, where do you all see the role for self-sovereign identity with standardization of digital identities and verifiable credentials in your approach? Casper is saying TNO is very active in this respect with ESSIF Lab and the Dutch Trust Network. Is there a connection also to your work there?
So that's a question for me, obviously. There's certainly a relation there, because when you look at the self-sovereign identities, that's about digital identities, and how we currently apply them is related to what Casper says, to credentials, and that could also imply to qualification, permits, and what have you. So you can apply the self-sovereign identity network that's already in place, sovereign, where we are a node steward. So you can apply this, for instance, to certificates of origin in global trade, or letters of credit. So if you look at certificates of origin, they are issued by some authority abroad, And whenever they are issued, they are currently sort of transported, you could say, via the forwarder to the country of destination. Now at origin, they never know what happens with this certificate. So this could be a means to use this infrastructure to share these qualification permits, certificates, and all these kind of things. At this time, I'm in this webinar, but at the same time, I could have joined a workshop with Swisscom and Proximus particular on this topic. So we try to integrate them and to link them to ledgers that support supply and logistics operations. I hope that answers the question.
I think it does. Yeah, that sounds great indeed.
Yes.
Or please go ahead.
Yeah, sorry, Victor here. And to add on the thing Wout just said, I would say at least you need a digital identity. And that could be, of course, a self-sovereign identity. But maybe that's not needed directly because self-sovereign identities are challenging on their own. But at least we need a digital identity. And in supply chain and logistics, there are more solutions right now for these kind of digital identities that has to be explored, to be honest. And in the TradeTrust initiative presented by Aljosja, we are also exploring other ways of using digital identities.
Yeah, from our perspective, we also have to explore the functionality that has been developed in logistics called iShare. So we have to see how we can integrate our ledger solutions with iShare.
Yeah, that's a well-known example in logistics.
Yes.
Yeah, that's the same. It also goes for us, basically. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, there's a second question of Caspar. So to what extent is this concretely in your plans for the current initiative? So I think in BlockCert, we will try to explore how to apply SSI with certificates. But in general, the application and the plans depend on business needs. So in BlockCert, there is a need, but other needs will have to pop up. Like what I said, the certificate of origins. This needs time. So, yeah. And marketing.
And legislation also.
And legislation.
No? Yeah.
Is there anything in particular you guys would like to add as we're getting closer to the end of this webinar?
No, it was a very nice webinar. Thank you all.
Yeah, thanks all for joining. And after a bumpy start with a broken Zoom link, I'm happy we got a full house after all. So if you would like to know anything after this webinar, feel free to either reach out to myself or BCNL via all our channels. And of course, all of the parties that have contributed to this event. So thanks so much and see you at the next one.
Thanks, Rudolf.
Thanks for organizing, Rudolf.
Yep. Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.